I think that President Trump's decision to accept this foreign plane is really an outrageous bribe. Under no circumstances should our taxpayers be on the hook for this massive cost to modify and use a foreign plane as Air Force One. The funding that Congress appropriates in this bill should take care of our service members and provide them with cutting-edge capabilities, not spent unnecessarily to retrofit a royal plane. This is massively wasteful, and actually the next generation Air Force One is already in the pipeline. And I also, by the way, think it is a huge security vulnerability on this plane. This amendment that the Senator's office offers would prevent the Department of Defense from wasting any more precious taxpayer resources on a truly corrupt and, I believe, wasteful endeavor. So I hope my colleagues vote yes.
But I've sat here this morning, and I appreciate the bipartisan words. But with all due respect, Madam Vice Chair, when you say that the President of the United States has been bribed,
I said potential.
that's pretty strong.
The left is losing their minds over a Boeing 747, a generous gift from Qatar meant to upgrade our critically outdated presidential fleet has been twisted into a bribe and a scandal by D.C. Democrats. We are diving deep into the Senate floor footage where they threw around accusations of corruption and waste without a single fact to back it up. If you are tired of the political lies surrounding the Qatari jet and the attempts to weaponize every issue against the former president, then hit that like button right now and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We're cutting through the noise and exposing the hypocrisy on the Air Force One saga.
When you say that the director of the Office of Management and Budget is corrupt, that's pretty strong. And I think if you're going to say someone has been bribed or someone is corrupt, you ought to be specific. And I notice you haven't been. And I don't think this is, I've listened to a lot of pretty words about bipartisanship, but then we get personal. I don't think it's productive. It's up to you. This is America. You can say and believe what you want. But if you're going to say somebody's been bribed, you need to say specifically by whom, for what. If you say Russ Vogt is corrupt, I want to know what that means, with all due respect.
Tremendous amount of respect for the ranking member, but I think the narrative that you're drawing is just not factual, sir. That has not been said. The president has never came out and said he's putting this in the library. He said it in a joke one time, but the truth is that because you've been in the briefing, I've been in the briefing, they actually talked about using this particular plane for the vice president in the next presidential election, or the next president that sets President 40, whoever the 48th president of the United States is. They're talking about using the current one that has been in the air for over 35 years to possibly be retired and go in the presidential library. You and I sat in that same conversation, that same briefing. And so the narrative that you're drawing is just not factual. And then the plane itself, for those that don't know, but those that do know, because there's a few of us that was in the briefing that was on the armed services, this plane was offered during the President Biden's administration. They actually started negotiating this in August. And I was in Qatar when the Prime Minister originally talked to me about it. I came back and actually talked to our committee about it at the time, because there was an issue on how they could actually do it, if it could be a gift or it could be a transfer, or if the Department of Defense could take it, or it could go straight to the executive branch. That conversation happened. And so the narrative that you guys are drawing just isn't accurate. And I wish, if you guys are going to have concerns, that you actually speak from it on an actual perspective, not a political point. Now, if we want to talk about dollars and what it's going to take to retrofit it, fine. We can do that. But the current Air Force Two is also completely outdated, and the current Air Force One is completely outdated. So what are we supposed to do? Keep flying old airplanes? I just want to know what the solution is here.
The fact is that this aircraft has been thoroughly considered for donations to the President's library. We all know that. And this is not something that's going to go in the Air Force and just be another Air Force aircraft. In fact, it's ABC reporter, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Trump's top White House lawyer David Warrington concluded it would be legally permissible for the donation of the aircraft to be conditioned on transferring its ownership to Trump's presidential library before the end of his term, according to sources familiar with their determination. So the contemplation is very clear, and it's been documented. This is going to be transformed with Air Force money and then given to the library.
Now, let's talk about this so-called scandal involving a Boeing 747 gifted from the Qatari royal family. What you just witnessed in that Senate exchange is a perfect microcosm of what is broken in Washington, D.C. On one side, you have the radical left throwing around nuclear words like outrageous bribe, corrupt, and massively wasteful before they even have a single fact in hand. On the other side, you have common sense trying to break through the noise. The entire premise of the opposition's argument that accepting a functional, world-class aircraft for potential use as a presidential plane is somehow a crime or a bribe is nothing short of character assassination and political posturing. A senator in the video rightly called out this behavior. If you are going to accuse a president of the United States of being bribed or a director of OMB of being corrupt, you had better be specific. The fact that they can't be specific and that this entire narrative is based on insinuation and conjecture tells you everything you need to know about their motives. This isn't about national security. This is about scoring cheap political points against a political opponent they despise. Let's talk about the fleet. We are talking about Air Force One, the most recognizable symbol of our nation's power and continuity, and Air Force Two. They are old. We heard in the exchange that the current Air Force One has been in the air for over 35 years. Think about that. In a world of ever-evolving threats and technological demands, we are flying a military command center that is decades past its prime. The opposition has zero solutions. When challenged on what we are supposed to do, keep flying old airplanes, they have no answer. There are influence. Their somethings are doings. A gift of a high-quality Boeing 747 should be viewed as a cost-saving measure for the taxpayer on the initial purchase, providing a much-needed upgrade to the presidential and vice presidential fleet. This is an asset our nation needs, not a liability. And the left is trying to turn a generous donation into a political weapon. And let's expose the hypocrisy on the timeline. We learned that the negotiation for this plane didn't just pop up out of the blue under the current administration. Discussions and negotiations with Qatar actually started during the Biden administration. That detail is critical. It shows that there was a professional inter-administration discussion about the legitimate need for this aircraft and how to properly receive it as a transfer or gift. Yet, the opposition is now selectively memory-holing that fact, framing it solely as a nefarious scheme by one president. It's the typical D, C, double standard. If they do it, it's government business. If our side does it, it's a crime. The most persistent and frankly dishonest smear is this claim that the plane is just going to be retrofitted with $1 billion of taxpayer money and immediately gifted to the president's library. Now, let's be clear. We need to be vigilant about how taxpayer money is spent. $1 billion for a retrofit is astronomical, and the lack of a clear, accurate cost estimate from the Air Force is highly concerning. I want every single penny tracked. But the narrative in the Senate exchange was clear. The briefings discussed using this highly capable aircraft for the next president or the vice president as an essential part of our nation's airborne command capabilities. The opposition is focusing on the contemplation of a library transfer years down the line instead of the immediate operational need for a modernized fleet. They are creating a scandal where the initial intent was to upgrade our national security apparatus. Finally, we must address the funding, which is the only legitimate concern they've raised, only to completely misuse it. The admission that funds to upgrade the plane were reprogrammed from the nuclear modernization budget, specifically the Sentinel program, is deeply troubling. As a conservative, I believe in a strong national defense, and diverting funds from our nuclear deterrent is a serious matter. However, The true scandal here is not that a plane was accepted, but that the Sentinel program is so mismanaged and over budget that the Air Force feels it has excess to reprogram. Where is the Senate outrage over